The story opens with a vivid, tense introduction to the world after the outbreak, chaos, destruction, and the first desperate moments for our main survivors as they narrowly escape a town being overrun. They band together, trying to find safety but quickly realize the undead horde is bigger and smarter than expected. Part 2, Fragile Alliances. The survivors encounter another group. Trust is scarce. Conflicting goals and personalities create tension. They must decide whether to join forces or risk being picked off alone, while the undead threat lurks constantly. Part 3, The Safe Zone. The survivors hear rumors of a safe zone. They embark on a dangerous journey across zombie-infested territory, facing environmental hazards and moral dilemmas. Suspense builds as they near the safe zone, only to discover unsettling truths. Part 4, Betrayal in the Ranks. Internal conflict escalates. A betrayal within the group jeopardizes their mission and survival. Meanwhile, the undead horde adapts and pushes closer, forcing the survivors into a desperate stand. Part 5, The Siege. The safe zone is attacked. Intense, strategic combat scenes. Survivors use every trick to hold their ground, but losses mount, and morale falters. The question, can they survive the siege or will they be wiped out? Part 6, The Last Hope. With dwindling resources and time, the survivors launch a risky counterattack or escape plan. The story deepens emotionally, showing sacrifices and heroism in the face of certain death. Part 7, Final Stand. The climax, an epic, suspenseful battle where every character's fate hangs in the balance. The undead horde seems endless, but the survivors fight with everything they have. The battle's outcome remains uncertain until the very end. Part 8, Dawn After Darkness. Resolution. Survivors reckon with what they've lost and what remains. Hope glimmers faintly, hinting at a new beginning, but the world will never be the same. Now, here's Part 1, The Collapse, full 795 words. Part 1, The Collapse. The sun was setting over the rusting skeleton of what used to be downtown Charleston. Its orange glow filtered through the cracked windows and splintered walls of abandoned buildings. Silence pressed heavily over the city, broken only by the distant groans that chilled the blood. The dead were moving. Jesse crouched behind a crumbling concrete barrier, eyes scanning the streets. His breath came in ragged bursts, every muscle taut as if waiting for a predator to pounce. Around him, 3 others, Emma, Marcus, and little Lily, mirrored his tension, clutching whatever makeshift weapons they had. "Did you see how many there were back there?" Emma whispered, her voice shaking. "Too many," Jesse said, voice low but steady. "This town's lost. They'd barely escaped the grocery store moments ago." A careless noise had drawn a swarm of the undead, and their hurried flight through back alleys had been nothing short of a nightmare. Emma's screams when a rotting hand grabbed her jacket still echoed in Jesse's ears. But now, in the shadow of the city, they could only pause and plan. They needed a safe place anywhere but here. Lily tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Are they gonna catch us?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Not if I have anything to say about it." The group moved silently, careful to avoid broken glass and debris that might give away their position. Their footsteps were whispers in the twilight, but the moaning from the streets was growing louder. Jesse motioned them to halt as a pack of shambling figures appeared at the end of the street, their pale skin blotched and eyes dead yet hungry. One of the creatures stopped, head twitching as if catching their scent. "Damn it," Marcus muttered. "We're not going to make it out of this city if they keep tracking us like this." Emma bit her lip. "Where do we even go? The highway is blocked, and the bridges are either destroyed or crawling with those things." Jesse's mind raced. They'd heard rumors on the radio before the signal went dead, about military evacuation points and safe zones, but nothing concrete. Those were probably lies, he thought bitterly. A sudden shriek echoed from a nearby alley. The group froze. Lily pressed herself against Marcus, eyes wide. "They're everywhere," Emma whispered, gripping her crowbar tighter. Jesse looked around, desperation clawing at him. "We need to get to the river. There's a boat dock." Maybe we can find a way out of the city by water. No guarantees, Marcus said grimly. But it's better than being trapped here. They moved as one, stepping over fallen bodies and discarded belongings. Each corner held a threat, and every shadow seemed to twitch with unseen dangers. Their breaths were shallow, every sense heightened. As they neared the riverbank, Jesse spotted a small warehouse with boarded-up windows. This might work. We hold up here for the night, figure out the next move. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of mildew. The dim light barely revealed crates stacked haphazardly. Lily found a corner and sat, rubbing her arms. Emma pulled out a half-empty water bottle and handed it to her. Jesse took a deep breath. We can't stay long. If the horde finds us, it's over. Suddenly, a faint scratching noise echoed from the other side of the warehouse. Everyone tensed. Who's there? Jesse called out, voice steady but loud enough to challenge whatever lurked. Silence. Then a soft cough. Emma raised her crowbar. Show yourself. From the shadows stepped a man, gaunt, clothes torn, eyes wild with fear but relief at seeing others alive. Please, don't shoot, he said hoarsely. Marcus stepped forward cautiously. Who are you? My name's Henry, the man said. I've been moving north, trying to find survivors. Heard there was a convoy heading out. Have you seen anything? Jesse exchanged a look with Emma and Marcus. Could they trust this stranger? There was no choice. The dead were closing in. We're with you, for now, Jesse said. Henry nodded, swallowing hard. We have to keep moving. The undead aren't the only danger anymore. The group settled in, nerves fraying as night fell and the sounds of the horde grew louder outside. Jesse thought about the days before the outbreak, before everything collapsed. A world that seemed so solid and safe was now just a fragile memory. He clenched his fists. Survival was all that mattered. One step at a time. One breath. One fight. Because tomorrow, the dead would come again. Would you like me to proceed with part 2 next? The warehouse, once a refuge, suddenly felt like a cage closing in on them. Outside, the dead shuffled relentlessly, their guttural moans scraping against the boarded windows like a warning. Inside, the survivors, Jesse, Emma, Marcus, Lily, and the new arrival, Henry, were on edge, each haunted by memories of what had been lost and the fear of what was to come. Henry's presence was both a relief and a risk. Jesse had learned quickly that in this dead world, trust was a fragile currency, easily spent, seldom repaid. But for now, their numbers made them stronger, and they needed every advantage. We need supplies, Henry said, breaking the heavy silence. His voice was rough, as if disuse and exhaustion had worn it thin. If we're going to survive, we can't just run and hide. We need food, medicine, weapons. Marcus nodded grimly. Agreed. But where? This city's crawling with those things. Any wrong move and we're dead. Emma paced near the cracked window, eyes scanning the empty streets bathed in moonlight. There's an old hospital across the river, she said. Abandoned, but it might have what we need. It's risky, more undead, and maybe others, but it's our best shot. Jesse studied the map Henry had pulled from his torn backpack. The hospital is almost 2 miles away. We'll have to cross a bridge, and those things are everywhere. Lily clutched Emma's hand, eyes wide and fearful. Can't we just stay here? No, Jesse said firmly. Staying still means waiting to be found. The group made a plan. They would move at dawn, travel in pairs, and keep weapons ready. Henry, despite his weariness, volunteered to scout ahead. Before dawn, the group tried to rest, but sleep was elusive. Every creak of the warehouse set their nerves on edge. The dead outside seemed to circle endlessly, their patience eternal. When first light bled into the sky, Jesse, Emma, and Lily prepared to move. Henry slipped out quietly to scout the route. Crossing the bridge was a nightmare. It groaned underfoot, the rusted metal threatening to give way. Below, the river was sluggish and choked with debris. From the far side, groans echoed, more undead waiting. Emma held Lily close as they darted forward, each step a gamble. Marcus stayed back to cover them, firing a single shot to distract a cluster of shambling figures. Halfway across, Henry reappeared, breathless. "It's worse than I thought," he warned. "There's another group, armed, dangerous. They're not like us." "Hostiles?" Jesse's jaw tightened. "We can't afford another enemy." The hospital loomed ahead, a shadowy monolith against the pale morning. Broken windows, rusting fences, and graffiti spoke of neglect and chaos. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of antiseptic and decay. The group moved carefully, their footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. Every shadow seemed to twist into something alive, every sound a threat. They found what they came for: canned food, dusty medical supplies, and a cache of hunting rifles left behind in haste. But the triumph was short-lived. A sudden noise, metal scraping against concrete, made them freeze. From the darkness stepped a figure, rifle trained on them. His eyes flicked with suspicion and something darker. "Who are you?" the man demanded, voice sharp. Jesse raised his hands. "Survivors, like you. We don't want trouble." The man hesitated, then lowered his weapon slightly. "Name's Walker. This is my crew's territory." Emma's grip tightened on her crowbar. "We're just here for supplies. No fight." Walker's eyes narrowed. "There's no such thing as no fight anymore." Tension cracked the air. Lily whimpered behind Emma. Jesse stepped forward slowly. "Maybe we can help each other. The dead aren't the only problem out here." Walker's gaze flicked over the group. "You're lucky I'm feeling generous. We've had enough bloodshed." They agreed on a fragile truce: share supplies, watch each other's backs. But the unspoken truth lingered: one wrong move, and all would be lost. That night, as they huddled in the hospital's basement, Jesse watched the others sleep fitfully. The alliance was a thread stretched thin by fear and desperation. Emma whispered, "Do you think we can trust them?" Jesse's jaw clenched. "We don't have a choice." Outside, the undead groaned and shuffled, a relentless tide against a crumbling shore. The survivors had found allies in the darkness, but the shadows held secrets that might destroy them all. Tomorrow, they would fight, not just for supplies, but for survival against both the living and the dead. Because in this new world, the greatest danger was never just the Horde, it was the people who still walked among them. Would you like me to continue with Part 3 next? The hospital's flickering fluorescent lights cast long shadows down the cracked hallways, barely holding back the darkness outside. The fragile alliance between Jesse's group and Walker's crew held, but tension hung thick in the air like smoke after a fire. Trust was a luxury no one could afford. Jesse rubbed his tired eyes, scanning the map Henry had found in the emergency supplies room. The rumored safe zone was marked just beyond the next county line, a place called Haven. It was supposed to be a military stronghold, fortified and free of the undead. But in this world, rumors were often more dangerous than the Horde itself. "We have to get there," Jesse said firmly, laying the map on a rusted table. "If the stories are true, Haven is the last place we stand a chance." Emma shook her head, exhaustion in her eyes. "Or it's a trap. What if it's overrun? What if it doesn't exist?" Lily clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter, whispering, "I want to go home." Marcus looked grim but resolute. "Home is gone, Lily. This is our new reality. We survive together, or we don't survive at all." Walker lit a cigarette, smoke curling around his weathered face. "I don't trust no safe zones. But we don't have much choice." The plan was set. At first light, they'd break camp and travel toward Haven. The route would take them through dense forests, abandoned towns, and the ruins of what used to be a thriving highway. Every mile held danger, not just from the undead, but from desperate survivors who had long ago lost their humanity. Before dawn, the group gathered their weapons and rations, steeling themselves against the uncertainty ahead. The hospital's walls seemed to close in as if warning them to stay, but staying meant death. They moved in a tight formation, eyes sharp for any movement in the gloom. The forest swallowed the sounds of their footsteps, the canopy blotting out the early morning sky. It was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. Henry took point, his senses honed from months on the road. "We're not alone," he muttered, voice barely audible. Suddenly, a twig snapped behind them. Emma spun around, crowbar raised. A figure burst from the underbrush, another survivor, ragged and wild-eyed. "Please," the stranger gasped. "Safe zone, it's not what they say." Jesse lowered his weapon slowly. "Talk." The man's voice cracked. "It's a trap. The military's gone dark. Haven's overrun. They're using it as bait, to lure survivors." A cold wave of dread swept through the group. If the safe zone was a trap, then what was left? Where could they run? Walker cursed under his breath. "We're sitting ducks if we keep heading that way." Emma's eyes burned with defiance. "So what do we do? Turn back? Wait to be picked off?" Jesse's mind raced. The lie of safety was worse than no hope at all. But giving up wasn't an option. "Let's keep moving," he said, voice steady. "We'll scout ahead cautiously. If it's a trap, we'll find out before it's too late." The stranger nodded weakly. "Be careful. The undead they're different. Smarter. Faster." The journey pressed on, each step heavier than the last. Abandoned cars lined the highway, their shattered windows reflecting the overcast sky. The stench of decay hung thick, a constant reminder of the world they had lost. As they approached the outskirts of the supposed safe zone, the silence turned oppressive. No birds sang. No animals stirred. Only the distant sound of slow, deliberate footsteps. From the shadows, the undead emerged, pale, but with an unnatural speed and coordination. They moved as a pack, flanking the survivors with unnerving intelligence. "Move!" Jesse shouted, firing his rifle as Emma swung her crowbar at a charging zombie. Marcus covered the rear, dispatching one creature after another. Lily screamed as a creature lunged too close, but Henry caught her just in time, pulling her to safety. The battle was desperate and chaotic. The undead's speed was unlike anything they had faced. It was as if the horde was evolving, becoming something more terrifying. When the last creature fell, the group collapsed in exhaustion, hearts pounding. "We're not ready for this," Marcus panted. "Not even close." Jesse looked at the horizon, where the shattered gates of Haven loomed like a dark promise. The truth was clear, safety was an illusion, and their fight was far from over. "We keep moving," Jesse said, voice resolute. "Because the only thing worse than the undead is giving up." Want me to continue with part 4 next? The ruins of Haven stretched before them like a wounded beast, walls scarred, gates twisted, a fortress that had failed its own people. Jesse's group slipped through the broken entrance, weapons ready, senses screaming danger. The air was thick with decay and something else, betrayal. They had hoped to find shelter, allies, even safety. Instead, they found suspicion and secrets. Walker's crew had disappeared during the approach, leaving Jesse and the others to explore the compound alone. That absence weighed heavily, trust was eroding fast. Emma's eyes flickered with doubt as she whispered, "Something's wrong." They moved cautiously through the empty barracks, finding signs of recent struggle, bloodstains, overturned furniture, hastily abandoned weapons. The place was a ghost town haunted by the living and the dead. Henry scanned the shadows, voice tense. They didn't leave by choice. Something forced them out. A sudden noise shattered the silence, a sharp click, the sound of a gun cocking behind them. "Freeze," a voice ordered. A figure stepped out from the darkness, gun trained on Jesse. Emma's grip tightened on her crowbar. "Who the hell are you?" The man's eyes were cold, calculating. "Name's Briggs. You're not welcome here." "We're survivors," Jesse said evenly. "We want no trouble." Briggs laughed, bitter. "No trouble? You're here to take what little we have left. Tension exploded. Weapons raised, accusations flew. But before the standoff could escalate, a new voice cut through the chaos. Wait. It was Walker. He emerged from the shadows, hands raised. Calm down. Jesse, we need to talk. Jesse lowered his weapon slightly but didn't relax. Where were you? Walker's jaw tightened. We were scouting. I swear. Briggs scoffed. Scout or sabotage? We can't trust anyone. Jesse's eyes narrowed. Briggs, enough. We need to work together if we want to survive. Briggs stepped forward, voice low but deadly. Survive? You think that's possible with someone like him? He nodded toward Walker. He's been talking to the Horde. A stunned silence. Jesse stared at Walker, searching for answers. Walker's face twisted with guilt and fear. It's true. I made a deal. I thought I could keep us alive. Emma gasped. You betrayed us? Walker's eyes pleaded. It was the only way. The Horde isn't just mindless. They're organized, controlled by something. I thought if I gave them what they wanted, people, supplies, we could avoid annihilation. Jesse felt a cold rage wash over him. Betrayal was a death sentence. We can't let this break us, he said through clenched teeth. We have to end this. Together. Suddenly, alarms blared, echoing through the compound. The dead were coming, and they were coming fast. Chaos erupted. Survivors scrambled to defend the gates, fighting off wave after wave of undead. Briggs, once hostile, now fought fiercely alongside Jesse and the others. In the midst of battle, Lily clung to Emma, wide-eyed with terror. Jesse fought desperately, every shot ringing out with the promise of survival. But the betrayal had fractured them. Mistrust gnawed at their unity, threatening to tear them apart at the worst possible moment. As the last of the undead fell, the survivors regrouped, breathing hard and bleeding. The cost was high, too high. Jesse looked at Walker, who stood bloodied but alive. Why should we trust you now? Walker met his gaze steadily. Because I want to fix this. We can still fight back. Emma shook her head. Maybe some things can't be fixed. But Jesse knew the truth. In this shattered world, survival demanded impossible choices. Betrayal was only the beginning. Tomorrow, they would face the dead again, and each other. Ready for part 5? You said. The night after the battle left the survivors hollow and weary. Haven, once a beacon of hope, was now a battered fortress barely holding against the dead, and worse, the shadows within their own ranks. Jesse sat by the dim firelight, the faces around him tired and haunted. Lily was asleep in Emma's arms, finally lulled by exhaustion. But the tension in the group was thick enough to choke on. Walker's betrayal had cracked their trust, and whispers filled the silence. Everyone wondered, was the Horde really controlled by something? Was there an enemy far worse than the shambling dead? Henry, ever vigilant, broke the uneasy quiet. There's more to this than just zombies. Something's manipulating the Horde, directing them. Marcus nodded grimly. I saw it. The way they moved, coordinated. It's like they were hunting us. Emma clenched her fists. If they're controlled, then by who? And why? Jesse's mind raced. The old world was gone, but this new nightmare had rules, hidden rules. To survive, they needed to uncover them. Suddenly, a distant rumble echoed through the broken walls. The survivors froze, weapons ready. A second later, a group of undead burst through a side gate, but these weren't the slow, mindless creatures they knew. They were faster, smarter, their eyes glinting with unnatural awareness. The survivors fought fiercely, but it was clear, the Horde was evolving. The dead were adapting, learning. In the aftermath, Jesse's group found strange markings etched into the walls of the compound, symbols that seemed to pulse with a dark energy. Walker's face was pale. I've seen this before, he whispered. Before the fall, there were rumors, secret experiments. Attempts to control the dead. Emma stared at the symbols, a chill running down her spine. Are we dealing with something human? Or something worse? Jessie knew the question was more than philosophical. If the Horde was being controlled, then the fight was not just for survival, it was for the future of what humanity remained. That night, Jessie couldn't sleep. He stared into the darkness, hearing the distant groans of the undead and wondering how many of the living could still be trusted. Because in this dead America, the greatest threat wasn't just the endless Horde, it was the hidden enemy pulling the strings. Would you like me to continue with part 6 now? Jessie stared at the faded map pinned to the cracked wall, tracing the jagged line that led deep into the city's abandoned industrial district. Somewhere in that twisted maze of factories, warehouses, and silent streets, lay the source of the Horde's unnatural behavior, the hidden enemy they had to find. We have to go in, Jessie said, his voice steady despite the weight of the unknown. If the undead are being controlled, we need to find who's doing it. Cut the head off the snake. Emma studied him carefully, eyes sharp and unyielding. It's a suicide mission. We don't even know what we're walking into. Henry nodded. But if we don't, the Horde will keep evolving. They'll come for every last one of us. Lily clung to Emma, her wide eyes reflecting the flickering firelight. Please don't leave me. Jessie knelt, looking into the child's terrified face. We're all going to do everything we can to keep you safe. The group prepared to move at first light. They packed what little supplies remained and sharpened their weapons. The silence of the night pressed on them, heavy with unspoken fears. As dawn broke, they slipped out of Haven's broken walls and into the city's decaying heart. The streets were eerily quiet, the buildings looming like ancient tombstones. Every shadow seemed alive with menace. Henry took point, his instincts guiding them through the labyrinth of rusted metal and shattered glass. They moved quickly but cautiously, senses straining for any sign of danger. Suddenly, a shrill alarm shattered the silence, a piercing siren that sent a ripple of unease through the group. It's a trap, Marcus hissed. We've been made. From the shadows, figures emerged, not undead, but heavily armed soldiers clad in black armor, faces obscured by helmets. Their weapons were high-tech, the barrels glowing with a cold blue light. We don't want to fight, Jessie called out, stepping forward with hands raised. We're just survivors. One soldier stepped forward, voice distorted by a filter. You are trespassing on restricted ground. Surrender. Walker scowled. Restricted? What the hell is this place? The soldier's response was interrupted by the sudden roar of engines. From the sky, drones descended, scanning the group with harsh, red beams. We're not surrendering, Jessie said firmly. We want answers. The soldiers hesitated, then lowered their weapons slightly. Follow us. You will be questioned. Despite the risk, Jessie knew they had no choice. If this was the source controlling the Horde, they needed to face it head-on. The survivors were led into a vast underground complex, sterile and humming with ominous energy. Screens flickered with images of the city above, sensors tracking every movement. Inside, they met Dr. Caldwell, a man whose cold eyes betrayed no remorse. He explained the truth, a secret government project gone horribly wrong. The undead were no accident, they were an experiment in control and weaponization. We lost control, Caldwell said quietly. But the program continues. We believed we could harness the dead, but instead we created a nightmare. Jessie's fists clenched. You unleashed this horror on the world. Caldwell shrugged. It was meant to save humanity. Instead, it's destroying it. The survivors realized the fight was far from over. To stop the Horde, they had to destroy the heart of the darkness, this underground lab, and end Caldwell's twisted project once and for all. Ready for part 7? You said. The underground lab buzzed with cold, mechanical precision as Jessie and his group gathered in the shadowed control room. The sterile walls, lined with blinking monitors and cables, seemed to mock the very idea of hope. Outside, the undead hordes pressed relentlessly, a tide of death driven by forces beyond comprehension. Dr. Caldwell's confession still echoed in their minds, the government's twisted experiment to control the dead had spun into chaos, turning the undead into a weapon no one could contain. "We have to destroy the facility," Jesse said, eyes locked on the main console. "Cut off their control, stop the horde from evolving." Emma nodded, loading her rifle. "But the place is crawling with soldiers and automated defenses. It won't be easy." Henry checked his weapon's ammo. "We have to try. For everyone left alive." Walker paced, glancing warily at the locked doors. "There's no turning back. This is it." Suddenly, alarms blared, red lights flashing. The facility's security systems had detected their presence. Heavy footsteps thundered down the hallways, soldiers, and worse, undead that seemed coordinated, almost intelligent. "We need a plan, fast," Marcus urged. Jesse's mind raced. They split into two teams. One would head to the central reactor to plant explosives, while the other would hold off the incoming waves and secure the exit. Emma volunteered for the assault team alongside Henry. Jesse stayed with Marcus and Walker to cover their retreat. The corridors echoed with the clash of gunfire and the guttural snarls of the dead. Automated turrets whirred to life, firing streaks of laser light. The survivors ducked and dodged, every second a battle for survival. Emma's team fought their way to the reactor chamber, the air thick with smoke and tension. Henry set the charges, hands trembling slightly as the timer ticked down. Meanwhile, Jesse's group held the narrow exit corridor, fending off relentless waves. Walker took down soldier after soldier with brutal efficiency, his earlier betrayal forgiven, at least for now. As the charges neared detonation, Emma radioed Jesse. "Get out now. We don't have time." They fought their way back through the collapsing facility, explosions rocking the walls, debris falling like deadly rain. The undead swarmed, their hunger unyielding. At the final door, Jesse hesitated for a split second, Lily's terrified face flashing in his mind. Then he burst through, dragging her to safety. Behind them, the underground lab erupted in fire and smoke, a roaring inferno swallowing the nightmare whole. Outside, the survivors gasped for breath, eyes wide with shock and relief. The control over the horde was severed, for now. But the war was far from over. Jesse looked at his group, battered, bloodied, but alive. "This is our chance to rebuild. To fight back." Emma wiped blood from her brow. "And to make sure this never happens again." As the sun rose over the ruined city, the survivors knew one truth: their stand was only the beginning. Shall I continue with the final part 8? The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting pale gold across the ruined cityscape. The underground lab's destruction had sent shockwaves through the undead ranks, fracturing their coordination. Yet the horde still surged, a tidal wave of death that refused to relent. Jesse stood atop a crumbling rooftop, scanning the devastated streets below. His breath fogged in the cool morning air. Around him, the survivors gathered, weary, wounded, but unbroken. This was their final stand. Emma reloaded her rifle, eyes fierce. "They'll be back in force soon. We need to hold this position at all costs." Henry checked the barricades, reinforcing weak points with scavenged metal. "We've got limited ammo and supplies. This fight won't last long." Lily sat close to Jesse, clutching his jacket. "Will it be okay?" Jesse forced a smile. "We'll fight together, every step of the way." Suddenly, distant groans rose, the undead returning, faster and more relentless than before. The survivors took their positions, ready to defend what little remained of their fragile hope. The battle was brutal and unyielding. Zombies clawed at barricades, snarling with hunger. Bullets tore through decaying flesh, but for every one that fell, 2 more pressed forward. Amid the chaos, Jesse spotted movement in the shadows, figures emerging not from the undead, but from the ruins of the city's resistance fighters who had banded together after the lab's fall. "Reinforcements!" Marcus shouted, rallying the weary survivors. Together, the two groups fought side by side, human grit against endless horror. Hours passed like minutes in the fury of battle. When the last zombie finally fell, silence settled, heavy, but filled with a hard-won victory. Jesse looked at the battered faces around him. This is more than survival. This is a new beginning. Emma nodded. We'll rebuild. We'll remember. We'll fight. Lily's eyes shone with hope. A future. As the sun climbed higher, the survivors prepared to leave the rooftop fortress, stepping into a world forever changed but not yet defeated. The endless undead horde might never be fully vanquished. But the human spirit, fierce, defiant, unyielding, would endure. And in Dead America, that was the last, best hope for tomorrow. If you want, I can help you with narration scripts, voice tone tips, or even ideas for visuals to match each part for your YouTube audiobook.